Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast, providing quick and innovative ways to make the absolute most out of your research time and creative ideas for sharing and displaying your family history. I'm your host, Lisa Louise Cook. Hello and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 98. Well, everything is crazy, moving fast as lightning around here because I am just getting ready for the California Family History Expo, which is starting tomorrow as of the date that I am recording this. And I am very excited to finally have it in my own backyard. It's going to be terrific. And then after that, believe it or not, right in the middle, smack in the middle of Family History Month, we're going to go on vacation. I'm actually going to have 5 whole days off. I don't even know what I'm going to do with myself, but we are going to lay by the pool, I think, and maybe play a round of golf. And that is about as strenuous as I want to get. So anyway, so this is just going to be kind of a quick little intro to an episode that I think that you're really going to enjoy, actually. I have a wonderful interview for you. It's with Leslie Huber, and she wrote a terrific book. It's called The Journey Takers. And I just think you're going to have a wonderful time listening to Leslie talk about her experience as a genealogist and as a mom and as somebody who feels our pain in terms of the kinds of challenges that we face in our research, but also shares our joy. And she has a lot of joy to share. So that's going to be coming up in just a few minutes. But I wanted to get a couple of news items out for you and some mailbox to you because there's so much going on. Of course, it is Family History Month. And first of all, I just want to say right off the bat, some thank yous. Thank you to the genealogy community for getting the word out about the new Google Earth for Genealogy Volume II DVD, which was officially launched on September 30th of 2010. Yay! When it comes to genealogy news, there are a few bloggers out there that people really turn to for their information. Folks like Dick Eastman at Eastman's online genealogy newsletter. Dick, thank you so much for running the item. I very much appreciate it. And of course, Randy Seaver over at Genea-Musings.com. And Thomas MacEntee of Geneabloggers. He is the official cheerleader of the genealogy bloggers out there. And of course, my dear friend, Dear Myrtle at DearMRTYLE&nbsp. And Diane Haddad, of course, over at the Genealogy Insider blog. And Joan Miller at the Lexicon.ca blog. And finally, Elyse Doerflinger not only shared our press release with her readers, but she had some really kind words to say about me and the podcast, which was really, really nice. But that's no surprise because Elyse is really a sweetheart. And she's just in her 20s, if you believe it or not. She is one of the youngest genealogists out there, certainly blogging. So thank you so much, Elyse. Thank you to everybody for getting the word out. I appreciate it. And oh gosh, let's see what else is going on. Oh, well, I got a little note. Now, we also last week, I think it was, published the premium episode number 55. That was all about Google Earth. It was kind of the Google Earth for Genealogy edition of the premium podcast. I have a lot of great free resources for you that kind of interface with what we do in the DVDs, maps and parish records and land patents in Canada and all kinds of goodies, plus a terrific interview with Ash Scott. He is the owner of Estate 3D, and we talk about how you can incorporate 3D models into your Google Earth maps. Think about the possibilities here. Perhaps you want to have a 3D model of an ancestor's home or the whole village. I mean, there's so many possibilities. And that is what we explore in episode 55 of the premium podcast. It really is amazing. And it's even more amazing when you see it in person. And there in the show notes for the premium episode, for you premium members, I have a little video. Ash actually put together a 3D model of my home just to kind of let me see how the whole thing works. And I've got a little video for you there in the show notes so that you can see my house and how it just kind of pops up out of the ground, and it's three-dimensional, and it looks exactly like it really is. And of course, we can use old photographs and architectural drawings and things that we have to also create the homes of our ancestors. And Jenna posted on my Facebook wall, she says, Premium Podcast episode 55, 2 thumbs up. Yay. Thank you, Jenna. That episode is one of my favorites. I know you guys are going to love it. And of course, if you'd like to become a premium member, head on over to genealogygems.com. You can just press the Join Today button and click that blue button, and that'll send you on your way to get you all set up as a premium member. We'd love to have you on there. And also this week, I came across a blog post about something new. It's called Liquid Galaxy for Google Earth. Pretty amazing stuff. I guess the story is that the folks at Google had built there at the corporate offices kind of this 3D version of experiencing Google Earth. So they took huge LCD panel televisions, like 8 of them, and put them around in, I don't know if it's like a semicircle or what. You can see it there on the post. But essentially, you step inside of this semicircle of LCD panel televisions and experience Google Earth. I mean, flying over places. It's pretty amazing. And I guess this became so popular that they started installing it in Google offices around the world, and also when they go to conferences and trade shows. And so on this post, now this is for the real techie geeks out there, actually the drawings of how to put this thing together and the specs. And I guess they've added something to Google Earth. I'm not even sure what it is. I didn't get that deep into it, but it helps you synchronize these 8 panels to create this 3D experience. I know we'll probably never do it, but you can watch a really cool video in this blog post that kind of gives you a sense of the experience of what this thing might be. And it's pretty amazing. So I'll have a link in the show notes for this episode, which is, of course, number 98, that takes you directly to the blog post I'm talking about, that shows you the video where you can kind of get inside Google Earth and experience it 3D. And I posted this also on my Facebook page, and Sherry Hopkins commented on the link that I posted, and she said, "This was beautiful. And since I was working much today with your Google Earth DVD, this makes me really want to go even further." So check it out on the show notes. Get inspired, as Sherry was, to take Google Earth even further for your ancestors. And also going on for Family History Month at the Family Tree magazine. Those folks are always very busy, and they have a brand new Ultimate Family History Sweepstakes. You can enter every day between October 1st and the 31st of 2010 for a chance to win the Ultimate Family History Giveaway. So you go to win.familytreemagazine.com. Yep, I'll have that for you in the show notes. The Ultimate prize giveaway is worth over $2,000. I have also contributed a premium membership to that and a couple of Google Earth for Genealogy DVDs. There's also, Family History Expos. They donated a retreat, like a research retreat at Salt Lake City, and they've thrown in a stay at the Salt Lake City Plaza Hotel, and there's tons of free subscriptions. MyHeritage, AmericanAncestors.org, Genealogy Bank, Rootsmagic, all kinds of really awesome stuff. So you can view the complete prize list on the entry page and all the information. You can do that once a day, every day in the month of October, to increase your chances to win that $2,000 prize. And here's something from my friend George Morgan, who you probably know as one of the genealogy guys. George is always a busy guy. And in addition to the Genealogy Guys podcast, he works tirelessly for the Federation of Genealogical Societies. And they're looking for a new editor for their electronic quarterly magazine, the FGS Forum. And according to their press release, they are now accepting applications for this position. So if you have some newsletter editorial experience, this may be just for you. It says here that the Federation is a non-profit organization founded in 1976 for the purpose of helping genealogical and historical societies and family associations strengthen, and grow. The FGS Forum is an important publication that supports the organization's mission. The magazine is accessible in PDF format by individual subscribers and by 2 officers of each FGS member organization. So you can request more information on the position by emailing them at application@fgs.org. Applicants may then submit a detailed resume for consideration along with several examples of publications for which they have been responsible for as an editor. These can be sent electronically, again, to application@fgs.org, and the deadline for applications is November 1st of 2010. Also from our friend Thomas MacEntee over at Geneabloggers, he is also very involved with the Illinois State Genealogical Society, and they have just announced their 2010 award winners. Awards are to be made at the ISGS Fall Conference on October 23rd of 2010 in Peoria, Illinois. 5 individuals are going to be honored by the Illinois State Genealogical Society, the ISGS, with awards for their outstanding achievements in the field of genealogy. ISGS will present the awards at the upcoming ISGS Fall Conference. You have family, you have history, held at the historic Hotel Pierre Marquette in Peoria, Illinois. The recipients include Sherry Hunter of Decatur, Illinois, who will receive the Community Service Award, and Fred Katko of Peoria, who will receive the Special Recognition Award for his work as a generous volunteer with the Peoria County Genealogical Society, as well as other societies. Christian Bender, a student, is going to receive the Youth Award for his research project on the Cedar Point Cemetery. And of course, the popular Kurt Witcher, Senior Manager for Special Collections at the Allen County Public Library in Fort Wayne, Indiana, will receive the ISGS Distinguished Service Award for his numerous contributions to the field of genealogy. And Margaret Collins and Daniel W. Dixon of Springfield, Illinois, and Auburn, Illinois, respectively, will receive the ISGS Individual Writer Award as co-winners this year. So congratulations to all the winners. You can check out more information at the Illinois State Genealogical Society website. And if you might recall, it seems like ages ago. I don't know when it was actually, but I think I talked about here on the podcast that I had gotten notified by Lulu.com. They were going to be adding my book, Genealogy Gems, Ultimate Research Strategies, to the iBookstore, which then makes the book available on the iPhone, the iPad, or the iTouch. Well, it's official. It's available. And the Genealogy Gems Ultimate Research Strategies is in the iBookstore. I don't know. I guess I was thinking it was already there. I thought somebody had emailed me about that. I'm pretty sure one of you listeners did. And I must be having a senior moment. But I got this email from Lulu this week saying it's official and it's in the iBookstore. And it might be that the book is now formatted for the iPad. I think in the past it might have just been the iPhone. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, the whole idea here is the book is now available to those of you who have one of those wonderful gadgets so that you can take the book with you no matter where you go. And also want to finally mention to you that we had Susan Kitchens on episode number 97. She was talking all about interviewing your relatives and recording those interviews. And she did a real nice blog post. It's kind of a follow-up on her blog to that interview with some more updated information. So you can check that out. I'll have a link for you in the show notes. Thank you so much again, Susan, for being on the show. Wonderful to have you. And I know that lots of you have been real interested in getting those interviews done with your relatives. And boy, that's really should be the first thing on our list, shouldn't it? Is talking to our oldest relatives. All right, coming up next, a few quick messages from you in the mailbox, and then we're off to our interview with Leslie Huber. Here in the mailbox, I got an amazing email this last week from Simona McAngus. She says, I finally looked for your iTunes app, then started listening. Thank you very much. This is an incredible value for such a low price. What was the app price? Maybe $2 or $3? Actually, it was $2.99, I think it is. And all the updates after that are free. She says, you have a fantastic podcast, and I have to say, you have such a clear, pleasant speaking style that is a pleasure to listen to. You keep a smile in your voice throughout the podcast. Thank you, Simona. I try. I'm having fun, so it's easy. She says, wonderfully refreshing, and one can catch every word you speak. I have been dabbling in this the last few years in fits and starts as time allows. Today, you spoke with your guest about clustering. It was very interesting and apparently a concept that many were aware of, but it was a new term for me. But then again, maybe I've heard it before, yet my time hadn't come to have it resonate with me. We've been spending a lot of time together lately, Lisa Louise. You have been going with me on walks with my dog, on drives into town, and even talking me to sleep at night. Finally, I went to your Genealogy Gems podcast.tv site today to subscribe to your newsletter. It's like I can't get enough of what you teach. But I haven't yet seen a page of explanation about the premium membership. I will take another look before I close out of your Genealogy Gems website. Keep up the great work. It's so appreciated. Simona McAngus. Well, thank you, Simona. I appreciate it. And actually, I know that you became a premium member, so welcome aboard. Glad you found that little blue Join Today button in the upper right-hand corner of the website to become a premium member. I'm so glad that you're enjoying the show and learning some new things. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much for such a nice email. And I have a message here from Kirsty Martin. She posted it on the Genealogy Wise social networking website. I've only recently started my genealogy, and listening to your various podcasts has been a huge help with my research. You're so warm and friendly that it makes it a pleasure to listen. Well, thank you, Kirsty. And hey, congratulations. You have now joined our addiction. Glad to hear that you're getting into family history, and we are very happy to have you here on the show. It's so much fun. I mean, isn't it, everybody? I know that you guys are as addicted as I am. So welcome, Kirsty. And let's see here. Brant sent me a message. He says, just a quick question. Is there a good place online to buy acid-free buffer paper? My parents have some old newspaper clippings I didn't know about, and I want to preserve them. Right now, they're just sitting in a file drawer in my mom's desk. I've got the archival page protectors, but I'm having trouble finding buffer paper. I can find acid-free paper pretty easy, but I want to use the buffered paper. Thanks again, and keep up the great work. Brant, you're absolutely right. Now, I went to Amazon, which, of course, when you use our Amazon links on the website, you're supporting the free podcast. We appreciate that. So you just go to genealogygems.com, click on the Amazon box that you see up there in the top right-hand corner, or you can actually start your search there in the search box. Either way, takes you to the site. And what you're looking for is Archival Methods 8x10-inch white archival paper. It's a package of 100 sheets. Now, buffered paper isn't always called buffered in the title. In fact, you tend to get a lot of other types of results when you try to search on the keyword buffered, which may have been part of the problem. So what you're really looking for, and what this Archival Methods white archival paper is paper buffered with calcium carbonate, 2 to 3%. Alkaline reserve, and it's acid free, and that's exactly what this stuff is, and it's very affordable. So I will have a link for you to take you directly to that product in the show notes, but that's a good point. When you're looking for that buffered paper that we've talked about here on the show, you're going to have to go back and down to the bottom and read the specifications on the product that you're looking at, because it may say acid free or archival, but you're going to go down, look in the specs, and see where it says actually buffered. So I hope that helps out, and congratulations on your find. Sounds great. And friend of the show, Terry Chafin, she wrote in and says, so I have to tell you, it makes me smile every time you say ED in the podcast about census records. I'm in the medical profession, and ED is not enumeration district. It is erectile dysfunction. I've been listening to all your podcasts at least twice. Once while swimming and once at my desk, and I always hear something the second time I missed the first time, or it didn't stick. I highly recommend listening to the podcast twice. Thanks, Terry. Terry, that's funny. Yeah, I guess in those commercials they do say ED and it means erectile dysfunction. Well, I meant enumeration district. I knew that you guys knew that. That's funny. Thank you, Terry. always nice to hear from you. And it's so funny. Terry always talks about that she has her waterproof MP3 player. So she gets out there and swims and listens to the show, and then also listens at her desk. And I've had more than one person write and say that when they go back and listen a second time, they do pick up new stuff they kind of didn't hear the first time. And boy, that's true for me. When I listen to podcasts, I oftentimes will go back and listen to past episodes just to kind of brush up. And I got some emails from Anne and Barbara this week about premium membership. Now, both were wondering the same thing. Do you have to have a PayPal account to sign up for premium membership? The answer is no, you don't. You can pay with a credit card through PayPal. It's actually really nice. You go ahead and click and say that you're going to pay through PayPal, and you're going to see in the bottom left-hand corner of the checkout page as you're doing the checkout process, it's going to ask you to log into PayPal, but it says you don't have a PayPal account. Just click the continue link to pay with a major credit card. It's really the same as swiping your credit card at any store. In fact, I think it's more secure than handing your credit card to some unknown, waiter or waitress. PayPal, gosh, I've been using it for 4 or 5 years now, have never had a single problem. And they probably have so many more hoops and locked doors and things that they do to keep it safe and secure, because that's their entire business. Certainly much more secure than even using your credit card at the store. So, but yeah, you don't have to have a PayPal account. So rest assured, you can just do the transaction just like you would with any other credit card transaction. So thank you, Anne and Barbara, for writing, because I'm sure that's a question people have had. And the link isn't totally obvious, so just look for it there in the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, well, that's it from you. And as I said, I'm going to rush off and get ready for the conference, then for vacation. And then I've got a couple of speaking engagements later this month for Family History Month. In October of 2010, I'm going to be talking down at the Hemet San Jacinto Genealogical Society. We're doing a seminar down there. And also, of course, a full day Google seminar for the California Genealogical Society in Oakland, California. But I will be back after vacation with a new episode. And of course, premium episodes are going to keep coming. But for now, I am really excited to bring you my interview with Leslie Huber, author of The Journey Takers. Rootsmagic 4 has been completely rewritten and is now even more powerful and makes building your family tree easier than ever. I love it. With Rootsmagic, you can add unlimited facts, find anyone in your database with lightning speed with Rootsmagic Explorer, quickly and easily create perfectly formatted sources with the Rootsmagic Source Wizard, create customized reports, and best of all, you can now take Rootsmagic wherever your research takes you with the Rootsmagic To Go, which lets you run Rootsmagic directly off your flash drive. And Rootsmagic makes it a snap to share your family history, publish a book, create stunning wall charts, shareable CDs, even generate websites automatically from your data. To download your risk-free trial of Rootsmagic 4, head to rootsmagic.com. See why professionals and beginners alike choose Rootsmagic at rootsmagic.com. Leslie Albrecht Huber has written over 100 articles, mostly on family history and history topics. Her work has appeared in publications such as Ancestry, American Spirit, Family Chronicle, the History Channel magazine, Family Tree magazine, Internet Genealogy, and others. Leslie enjoys speaking to genealogy societies and other groups in New England and across the country. She lives in Western Massachusetts with her husband and her 4 children. And when she's not cheering on her children at basketball games and dance recitals, doing laundry, or typing on her computer, she loves studying maps and reading travel guides to plan her next journey. In her new book, The Journey Takers, she shares one of those journeys with us, her journey to discover her ancestors, climbing her family tree, and taking the trip herself to some of their villages of origin. Here's my conversation with author Leslie Huber. Well, I've been really enjoying your book, The Journey Takers, and I have to admit it, I don't read a lot of books that are published on families that aren't my own, which I imagine is the case for a lot of genealogists listening to us right now. But I have to say I've been very pleasantly surprised at how much I've enjoyed reading your book, probably because it's more than just a dry, published family history. So, Leslie, let's go back to the beginning and talk a little bit about how the Journey Takers came to be. First of all, you said in your acknowledgement in the book that you've always wanted to write a book. When did you know that this was the book that you wanted to write?
Well, like I said in my acknowledgments, I've wanted to write a book since I was 5 years old, and that's literally true, and I've wanted to write a book every day since I was 5. It wasn't just a phase I went through. And I think I knew that I wanted to write this book probably when I was in college, and about 12 years ago when I went to Germany in 1998 and did some research on my family that lived in Germany, I got very interested in their story. And as you say, I immediately saw it not just as the story of my family. It's, of course, very important for us to write our own family's histories, but that wasn't necessarily my intent in writing this book. I wanted to write a story that could speak to many people, that could describe to other people what their experience, their ancestors' experiences were like, and hopefully could connect emotionally with others as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I really picked up in reading the book was it's part family history, but it's also part the experience of the genealogist, which is probably why I feel like I'm identifying with your journey so much. And then, of course, you're talking about the kinds of things that you're getting from it. I'm curious, how long did it take you to complete a book like that? Because you are covering a lot of ground. You know, once you actively sat down to write, how long did it take?
A long time. So I did start working on it right after I got home from Germany in 98, and I actually first started putting some thoughts together then. So that was 12 years ago, and I did some writing of it, and then I kind of paused for a while as I realized that if I wanted this book to be able to reach other people, I needed to develop some ability to do that. So I began writing for magazines. And 100 magazine articles later, I'm finally publishing the book. So I took a kind of a break, although I was always kind of piddling with it. And then maybe 6 years ago, I started to write more seriously, and I finished it about 4 years ago. And then it took some time looking for a publisher, deciding what to do, and then the editing and graphic design process also took longer than I would have expected. But even the writing itself took several years and significant revisions. In fact, in one revision alone, I deleted 50,000 words.
Oh, my gosh.
A third of a manuscript. Yeah, so these weren't just, putting commas here and there, but significant edits.
Yeah. Sometimes they say it's as much about what you leave out as what you put in.
Yes, and that's hard for us to do sometimes. We get attached to what we write.
Yeah. Now, how did you finally, and we'll talk a little bit about what you cover in the book, but one thing that I think my listeners will notice is that you did make a conscious decision to add portions where you sort of hypothesize what the experience may have actually been like for your ancestors, what the emotions were that they may have been going through, which I think is why it's not a dry read, but you're very upfront about the fact that that's a decision that you've made and you want to just try to express what you think may have happened. How did you decide on that, and how did that present challenges as you were writing the book?
Well, that was a challenging development because I was committed from the beginning to writing nonfiction. And, several people suggested I do a fictional account, but I really wanted people to be able to learn about how things really were and not to be confused as they read. But at the same time, I felt like that if I never put emotion into it, that also was not nonfiction, that wasn't the truth either, because our ancestors certainly had emotions. That was very much a part of their experience, especially when we're talking about an immigration experience. And so, I didn't know exactly how to approach that at first, as I knew I wanted to describe the emotions that they might have had, and yet I didn't know exactly what they were. My ancestors didn't leave those kinds of records behind. And so I began kind of playing around with this idea with, as you say, I do fictionalize, but it's labeled that way. I say I envision them, or in my mind I can see them. And I began to do that, and at first it was just a little bit. And then as I had readers give me feedback, they said, we need more of this. This helps us to connect. This helps us to understand. And so that is the part of my book that most changed. It became a much larger and more important part of my story.
Yeah, I did enjoy that part. I think it does make it easier to connect with. I think we all do that, don't we? As we're looking at records, we start to wonder, and imagine. And I really got the feeling that you were really giving respect to your ancestors by saying, I know that this death record that I'm looking at is so much more than this death entry. There had to have been so much more that led up to this, that the anguish that people were going through. And I think that you communicate that really nicely.
Yes, well, thank you. I do think that if we get in a hurry in doing our genealogy research, we can just be looking for names and dates. But that's not, I think, the most fun part for most of us. We like to get to know them as people. And I think we can do that when we ponder on those dry factual records and think about what they meant in their lives. And then I tried to base my accounts, my envisionings, on social history research as well. So I tried to do a lot of research on what it would have meant in that time period for this to happen, and to read how others reacted and responded, so that I could, although I was making up their individual personalities, I could set it as much in reality as possible.
Absolutely. Well, Leslie, I'm holding the book here in my hands. I've been reading it every evening. And now on the cover, you've got a photograph of two people, a man and a woman. But I know that there are a lot more people involved in this book. Tell our listeners kind of a quick overview of who the journey takers are and who you're talking about in this book.
Well, the journey takers are the immigrants, basically. I use that word to describe Western European immigrants. And my book particularly tells the story of 4 of them. And the first section takes place in Germany. And in that section, the journey takers or immigrants are the people on the cover that you mentioned. It's Georg, Albrecht, and Minna Hocker. And they came from Mecklenburg-Schwerin in 1880. And so in that section, I describe their peasant life, their experiences, the decision process, the journey to America, and then settling into life here. And I do that in each section, but the second section talks about in Sweden, and the journey taker there is a Swedish immigrant who came at age 17. And then the third section takes place in England, and again, it's about an immigrant, an English journey taker. And then I bring all the families together in the last section that's called In Fremont, Utah, and describes as those families join together and as they do adjust to life in America. And then I try to weave in the title, The Journey Takers, is supposed to parallel the immigrants and their journeys with my own journey. So in a way, I'm the 5th journey taker, because I journey to their hometown, visit Germany, England, and Sweden, sit in their churches, drive the trail that they walked across the plains, sit at their tombstones, visit the towns that they settled in, and describe how learning about their experiences affects me and, in essence, takes me on a journey of my own.
Exactly, a physical and an emotional journey as well. Now, I know that you said in the book that some of these lines, you had already had some previous research from a professional genealogist that the family had hired, and then other lines, you were kind of tackling things on your own. And I jotted down a note that you made, which was that discovering a family yourself sort of makes the bond stronger. What did you mean by that?
Well, I don't know if everyone feels this way, but I always get excited when I find a line on my family that has very little done, because it's fun also to make a discovery of suddenly seeing generations of your family, which, of course, we as genealogists know you have to go and verify in the real records. But I get really excited when I can't find anything, because that means it's up to me, and I really am treading new ground. And I guess it makes the feeling of discovery all the more strong, and possibly because it's also more work, usually, to discover things on your own. And as you do that extra effort, I think that you become more attached to the family as you put that time in.
Oh, absolutely. And that excitement that gets associated with each find versus reading through it, if somebody else had it. And it's funny because, well, you make a great point that, of course, all of us need to be reconfirming and re-verifying information that we're getting from other sources. But you were talking early in the book about Anna and how it turned out Anna wasn't even yours, was she?
That's right. A professional genealogist, as you talked about, my great-grandmother hired a professional genealogist who lived in Germany to trace the German family. And he traced the family back all the way to the 30 Years' War, to Anna Gavershagen. And I read the family tree, and I just latched on to Anna. This is when I first started doing genealogy. So instead of working my way backwards, I just found her at the beginning and began to research about her and her life. And she had lived to be 96 in a time where nobody lived that long. And I thought she had this fabulous story. Her children all but one starved to death. I told all my family about her. And then later, when I really learned how you actually do genealogy research, I found that this professional genealogist had made a wrong turn in the 1700s. So 200 years after Anna, and there really was a woman named Anna Gavershagen, but she is not my relative.
Sort of a bittersweet find. I mean, it's a good thing that you clarified that, but probably a little hard to give her up.
It really was. I remember calling my sister-in-law and saying, "You remember Anna Gavershagen?" She said, "Oh, of course." I said, "You remember all those stories I told you about her?" She's like, "Oh, yes, I remember." I said, "She's not related to it." It was a little disappointing, but better to find out the truth, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of the folks listening right now to our conversation knows that I have done some research about a woman named Molly Brightstein, who was an ancestor of one of my previous guests. And I found myself becoming so attached to her. She wasn't in my family. I mean, it's really easy to do.
It is. We feel like we know them personally.
Exactly. And of course, that's the joy of the whole thing. Now, so you were having to make corrections along the way. Did you just stop right there? And, how do you cope with that?
Well, with that particular incident, I had gone back, finally doing what I should have done originally, generation by generation. And I still remember the moment when I found the birth record of this one ancestor, and I saw that there was a different father listed there. And, this alarm goes off in your head of, oh, no.
Yeah.
Now what? So I found a couple other records to be sure, but once I had gathered enough records, there was, as far as this can go, no doubt that the family went a different direction. So at that point, it did become that I was then digging my own path, tracing the family back in a different direction than they had been. Still in the same village, actually, but as I'm sure your listeners know as well, often in these little villages, there'll be a lot of families with the same surname because they'd lived there so long. They intermarry all sorts of places. So it was an easy mistake to make if you weren't being really careful.
Oh, sure. Now, were there any other surprises that you found along the way in the research that you did on this book?
I think probably my biggest surprise was finding out about Eliza Harris. I don't know if you've gotten there in your reading, but I had my Swedish ancestor, Sharsti, had married my English ancestor, Edmund Harris. And this is what I knew of the family. And I was looking through, I think actually it was in the International Genealogical Index, the IGI, and I found a marriage record for him where he had married before her. And nobody in my family knew about this. He had married a woman named Eliza Barrett. So I began looking into her, and I uncovered really quite an amazing story, which I couldn't believe that our family had lost this story, but it was a story of they had immigrated to Australia, had 2 children there, and then Eliza had set sail with her 2-year-old daughter and 6-month-old son to California, and Edmund was going to come later. They just didn't have enough funds for the whole family to go at one time. And the ship shipwrecked. Oh. And it was just heart-wrenching accounts because in an event that was so dramatic and unique like that, a lot of people wrote very detailed accounts of it. Now, Eliza did not survive, so obviously there's no account from her, but other people described in detail those final moments of her life as she strapped her 6-month-old son across her chest in order to save his life and make their way to a reef. But a big wave hit the boat right then, and they were washed overboard and drowned. Only 5 people drowned, and Eliza and her infant son were 2 of them, which is why our family never knew about them. They never got to the U.S., and Edmund remarried Sharsti, and I'm descended from that family. But it was, as I read this story, I just kept thinking, how is it that nobody could have known this? This is such a dramatic, heart-wrenching story, but things get lost so easily. I remember I called my grandma and said, did you know about this? And she said, I've never heard of Eliza Barrett. Who's that?
Oh, my gosh. Well, and you don't know, maybe, he may not have spoken much about it because it was painful, but it's a real reminder for all of us, in the research that we're doing that, boy, we have to be diligent about making sure we're recording and passing things on and nurturing that interest in our descendants, because it can be lost so quickly, can't it?
It can. It really is amazing. The other lesson I really learned research-wise in that instant was, even though my family hadn't left anything behind, I think sometimes we're quick to assume if our family didn't write anything, there's nothing to be found. But other people who were with her had written really fascinating, detailed accounts that give me great insights into our family, my own family. And I think that's often the case, that if we look outside of our family, we can find things that other people wrote that will give us really a lot of information about our own family.
That's a really great tip. It's a great reminder to all of us. How did you figure out that there was, that there were survivors, which then made sense that there might be accounts of it. How did you find all that?
Well, it's interesting. I write about this in my book. I had learned that they had set sail on the Julia-Ann was the name of the ship, but I didn't know the ship had shipwrecked at this point. And I think this will sound familiar to your listeners as well. I was up one night. I was just going to do a little 30-minute search on the Internet to see what I could find.
Is that possible?
No, I don't think so. It was finally 2:30 in the morning I found on this webpage it said there's only one ship of this particular type that had shipwrecked. It was the Julia-Ann. And I thought, oh, my goodness. So I clicked on that and clicked on this and clicked on that, and I eventually came to a scholarly paper that had been written called The Shipwreck of the Julia-Ann. And I followed the footnotes, which I also think is a good research tip I learned along the way, following footnotes because they often take us to the original sources. And so from those I was able to see that, that described the wreck. I was able to link into diaries that had been written by people on there that were footnoted, and one of the diaries described the wave washing overboard and the mother lashing her infant to her bosom, as it said, and, very specific details about Eliza. But it was from clicking on random sites and stumbling, really, upon this scholarly paper. So someone had done a lot of really good research before me, and that was a big help.
Yeah, but that's a great tip because I love that you followed those footnotes and checked them out, because those are sources, and who knows, you might spot something within that source that didn't strike the original researcher, but now is relevant. So that's a great idea. Well, another kind of unusual thing that took place in your family was right around 1820, I think you said it was, and that was the divorce of Kristoff and Christina Harpeck. That's a pretty unusual thing to come across when you're looking at records from 1820. Tell us about that.
Well, you're right. It was a very unusual event at that time period. And it's actually interesting how I saw that in the first place. I had found their marriage record, and then going through the records, I had found a marriage where he had married somebody later. And again, this is when I first started doing research. And I saw their names and the information, and there was a column at the end of the record. And to me, at that point in my life, it looked like a bunch of scribble. And I didn't know what it said. I couldn't tell. And I thought, I don't know what it says, but I've got the names and the dates. That's what I need. And I left it at that. And it wasn't until literally years later, when I was gathering things for my book, that I said, I can't believe I didn't figure out what this column says. I really need to do that. And so I took the time to go through those words, sometimes letter by letter when you're using that old Gothic script. And I realized that just that little squiggly column had tons of information. It told me that that was his fourth marriage, and it described what had happened to each of his previous wives. His second and third wives had died, and his first wife, the one I'm descended from, Christina, it said in there that they were geschieden, which meant divorced. And that was the first time I'd seen that. And I still think about sometime going and trying to dig through the old court records in Germany to see what I can find. I would have to either go there or hire someone because they're not available here, and they would be quite difficult to wade through. But, for someone to get divorced in that time period, it certainly wasn't just because they didn't share the same goals anymore as happens today, it would have been something drastic must have happened, and they wouldn't have been able to get divorced in a lot of the time period. But as I mentioned in my book, when I began trying to put them into their historical context, which I think is also really important, helps us to understand what was going on. This was the time period when French occupation had occurred, when Napoleon had come into Germany, and he had liberalized a lot of the laws, and one of the things that he had liberalized was divorce laws. And so there was this window of time where divorce became easier, and evidently my ancestors jumped at that chance and quickly got divorced while they were able to.
Wow.
I'll never know exactly why, but I do wonder.
Yeah. Well, and it would be really easy, particularly for a new genealogist, to see that marriage and just assume, oh, the previous wife died, right? That's kind of always the assumption. What are some of the common mistakes that you think that genealogists make? What resources do we overlook? What conclusions do we jump to?
Well, I think, as the thing that you were just saying, is one of the most common mistakes that I see when I talk to people who are just beginning, and that is that we don't get everything out of those we could call the basic records. We are too quick to just look for names and dates and pull them out. We want to fill in the information on our family group sheets and move on to the next person, instead of really taking the time to get all the clues out of those records, because sometimes there aren't going to be a whole lot of records, and we need to make sure that we are taking full advantage of them, because sometimes, like I found this little scribbled word in the margin of a marriage record that wasn't even the marriage record to my ancestor, gives me this great insight into what happened. And so I think that sometimes we get excited, right? We want to find the next thing and the next thing, but taking time to slow down and look through the record, and, a lot of times records will tell us their occupation, and this can give us great insight into their lives. They'll tell us the cause of death. They'll tell us about, the witnesses might be other family members. Sometimes it'll be a grandmother or a sister, and this, again, can give us clues into tracing our families. So I think that that's a really important thing. The other, I mostly do immigration research, and I think the mistake I see most often is now so many things are available online, particularly with immigration research. There's, in fact, almost all of the U.S. arrival lists are available online, and a lot of times I'll hear people say, well, I searched for my ancestor, and they weren't there, so they didn't immigrate in that time period, when we need to sometimes, again, just slow down and be more careful, because a lot of times our ancestors are in those databases, just their name is misspelled, or there's some error in the record that makes it difficult for us to find them. Like my German journey takers, the U.S. arrival list in New York says they're from Sweden. They're not from Sweden. Of course, they're from Germany.
Oh.
The guy at the top of the paper where it says, where are you from, he wrote Sweden, and then he drew a squiggly line all the way down the paper saying that everyone on the paper was from Sweden.
Oh, my.
Well, yeah, it makes you wonder how many other people on that page were not from Sweden. Obviously, maybe he was hungry. He wanted to get back home to dinner. He didn't want to ask each person where they were from. And so when I look for them, if I put that they're German, and they are German, but if I put that, I can never find them because they're categorized as being Swedish.
Exactly. Which is, again, why sometimes leaving things out, as we talked about before, even in your searches, is sometimes what's going to help you get to it, because that item that you know is correct is actually false in the documents and can throw it off. Yeah.
I think that we often have to think that we're trying to tease out the information that's in there, and how many different ways can we say it to make the computer give us the answer that we know is there. Exactly.
Well, now that the book is complete and it's been released to the public, I'm wondering, do you have one ancestor who is, in the end, the one that really spoke to you the most? Which one did you really come out feeling a new special bond with?
I think that ancestor would be Sharsti Nil's daughter, my Swedish immigrant. I think, for one thing, as I talk to other people as well, I think that we connect to our immigrant ancestors more strongly than other ones because their choices had such a big impact on us. They were a pivotal point in our family that changed history for our family and for us personally. So I think we're drawn to them naturally. And then as I learned about Sharsti, and again, I visited her hometown in Sweden. I sat in the church her family had sat in. I stood on the farm her family had farmed, looking over the land that she had looked over. And it's just an amazing experience. I'm sure other people have had that experience as well. And, it really helps you to feel close to them. And also I think the fact that she had come when she was 17 years old. She had joined the LDS Church, the only member of her family to do it, and one of the only people in her village. She set out to America by herself. And as I read her story, I was really struck with, you know, she was absolutely ordinary, average, just like everyone else. She wasn't prominent. She wasn't wealthy. Her story wasn't preserved, even among the family. She's not included in any history books. She's just like everyone else's ancestor. And yet I realized really what a phenomenal thing she had done and how much courage it had taken, what a huge risk it was. And I think it was her story that helped me to see that, you know, most of us have these ordinary ancestors, and yet that doesn't mean that they weren't amazing people as a whole. This immigrant group, I think, really were an amazing people that transformed the history of our country and our individual histories. And I think it was her story that helped me to see that and to see also some things, you know, as I interweave my own journey, to appreciate some things about my own family as I learned about her story.
Exactly. It's amazing to me. You know, I never get tired of or used to the fact that these people who, you know, didn't even have cars were globetrotting. I mean, you were talking about the family that went to Australia and then they tried to come to California, and incredible. They're like superheroes.
Right. And when we think about, I think I have a statistic that I give in one of my lectures that in Sweden at this time that my ancestor immigrated, 15% of people lived in the village they had been born in, and 70% of those who didn't lived within 15 kilometers of it.
Yeah.
So the great majority had never been more than a few miles from their home when they decided to come to America. I mean, it's, I think, astounding to think of them doing that.
Well, and it certainly says a lot for the kind of folks that I think you find in America today. It's not surprising, you know, because there's just some really risk-taking, hardworking people out there who made that journey and started that ball rolling, you know, decades and decades ago. Well, now I know that you're a mom of 4 young kids, and I'm curious, you know, what are some of the lessons that you learned throughout this whole research process and putting the book together, and how are you applying those to your family today?
I think that the most important thing I learned will probably sound so basic and obvious, and yet it's something that I think particularly people with young children have to remind themselves from time to time. It's so easy to get overwhelmed in the details and the tediousness that comes. But it just reminded me that really what it's all about is family. And that's what's really the most important thing. And as I was researching my, you know, distant family, it made me see that with my own family as well. And one of the things I talk about when I write about Sharsti is that what was unique about our immigrant ancestors was that they made these amazing choices. And for many people in the generations before that, they had had very little opportunity to make choices at all.
Yeah.
You know, they hadn't had religious freedom. They hadn't had freedom to move here or there. They were peasants. They didn't have political freedom. They really didn't have a lot of choice. And our immigrant ancestors suddenly were presented with choices. And it made me realize that even though sometimes we may feel stuck in life, that we have amazing choices. And it made me think about where I was in my life. At that point, I was a mom of 2 small children, and sometimes feeling maybe even a little trapped in my life with all the things that I had to do. And as I followed in Sharsti's footsteps, I realized I made this choice. This is what I've always wanted to do, and I wouldn't have it any other way. This is the way that I want it. And I think it was good for me to remind myself of that, you know, things may be difficult now and then, but we've made these choices, and to appreciate what we have. So maybe that is one of the main things that I learned in tracing my ancestors, and something I hope I continue to apply.
Exactly. Well, and not only does it remind us of all the choices that we have today, but how it wasn't very long ago that people were stripped of those, and how much we have to fight to protect them. That it's never to be taken for granted. And it's just like you were talking about the loss of our family history, how quickly that can happen if we take it for granted and we're not diligently protecting it. I so identify with what you're saying. I know at my point in my life, I feel so incredibly fortunate and blessed to be able to be doing what I love and be, having genealogy being my full-time career. And yet I still have that sticky on my computer that says, my kids and my husband come first. And that means if the phone rings, the recorder goes off or whatever, and they have got to come first, because isn't that really what it's all about? We're building those memories and the history for the future. And so I just think that I'm sure that resonates with so many people listening. So finally, I have to ask, are you currently actively researching your family tree? What are you working on today?
Most of the time today, I'm working on the journey taker still, even though it's done, which is something I maybe didn't understand so well when I first started to write a book. I love to write. It is my favorite thing to do, and I love to do genealogy research. I can't say that marketing is something that comes particularly naturally to me. So I am spending more time than I had expected working on that aspect of it. Of course, as genealogists, we always have the next project in our head, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have another ancestor who I would love to write about, her name was Sarah Ann Bean, and I have a daughter named Sarah Ann, named after her.
Oh.
She's one of those who's just always kind of stood out to me in my family tree, so I would love to someday maybe write a book about her.
Yeah. After you do a little bit more raising of the current generation that you're building, you've got 4.
Sometimes I say my youngest is 11 months old, so I think, maybe when he's in kindergarten, I'll have a little more time to do these things, but, there's never time to do everything that we want to do. It's the hard facts of life, isn't it?
Well, it is. And the only good thing I can share is that I have felt so many of the same things, and yet I can tell you that, sometimes it's after 40 and the kids are out of the house, and all of a sudden, everything breaks loose, and you're doing something that you didn't think you'd get a chance to do, but are enjoying it. I just want to say, on behalf of everybody, I'm sure who'll take a look at the book, thank you for carving out the time for creating the Journey Takers, because I can imagine the amount of work involved, and I just think it's wonderful when somebody so thoughtfully sits down and takes the time to share it, not just with their family, but with everyone. And I think your book has definitely reopened my eyes to the fact that, even reading other people's family histories, when done well, not only can you enjoy a tremendous story, but we all pick up things. I mean, I certainly was picking up, oh, yeah, I should go check those things out. Or just as a genealogist, some of the techniques you were using, I think that's tremendous. So I want to thank you for doing a bit of marketing, but it's okay, because really it's just getting the word out. And I just appreciate you taking time out from those precious little sweeties that you have and talking with us about your wonderful book.
Well, it's been lots of fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you.
Profile America, Friday, October 8th. One of the few joys left in long-distance flying is to sit back and enjoy a feature-length movie. But recently, one major airline announced it will be ending this entertainment, joining several low-cost airlines in the policy. While movies have been generally available on long flights for decades, the first movies shown in the air were a newsreel and 2 cartoons. These were shown on this date in 1929 aboard a Ford Tri-Motor operated by Transcontinental Air Transport. Regular in-flight movie service began in July 1961 on a Trans-World airline flight from New York to Los Angeles. Now, more than 3.9 million passengers fly between New York and Los Angeles every year. You can find these and more facts about America from the U.S. Census Bureau online at census.gov.
Thanks so much for joining me for Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 98. As always, you can find links for everything we talked about here on the show, including Leslie's wonderful book, The Journey Takers. Just go to genealogygems.com, click podcast in the menu, and navigate your way following the links, clicking the links all the way to episode number 98. If you have any questions or comments, email me at genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget, our 100th episode is coming up. And I definitely want you to be part of the party. So if you've got a little message, you want to email it to me. Again, genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. But you would make my heart happy if you called the voicemail line at 925-272-4021 and left your message so we could play it here on the show and hear your wonderful voice. So thanks so much again for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.